In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can project external images onto our model. So let's say that we want to add maybe a number or some sort of an image to part of this plane. So maybe the back fin here. So we'll find the back fin. I'm going to take the current material that's applied to it, Control drag to duplicate it. I'm going to open this up and rename it. So let's just call it fin material. Okay, and now for this back fin, I'm going to actually go ahead and add that new material on there. And so now we've got this fin material on our fin. So now let's go ahead and open up our material. And what I want to do is, instead of just having a color, this gray, I want to actually include a texture. If we click on this little arrow, you can see this is where we were able to add in things like noise and our tiles. But we can also load in an external painted image that maybe we've created in Photoshop or another application. So let's go ahead and hit Load Image. And then you want to navigate to your project files, or if you have another image that you'd like to use, you can do that. But if you navigate to your project files, you'll find an image called Tail Numbers. And so let's go ahead and open that up. So now you can see that image here. If we go ahead and click through, you can see what that image looks like. It's just a small image with some numbers on it. Okay, your texture could be a square texture that is, for a character. It could be a skin texture. It could be anything that you've created in another application, and now it's piped into the color. Okay, now if we want to mix it with the color underneath, we can go ahead and change this so that if our color here is red, you can see that it will blend it with the underlying color. Okay, we want to go ahead and keep our color the same, and we can go ahead and just say normal for that. Okay, so now we need to figure out how this is going to be applied. Okay, because right now it's sort of on there. You can see something's happening, but it's not really doing what we want it to do. Okay, and if I go ahead and click on this texture tag, you can see the projection type that we have here is set to UVW mapping, which would be great if we had a nice UV layout for this piece. But let's say that we don't have any UVs and we just want to slap it on like a label or a decal. We don't want to worry about the UVs. We can change the projection type. So in this case, let's go ahead and change it to flat. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to be able to move the projection around. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, instead of using model mode, I'm going to go down and use texture mode, and you can see this sort of yellow grid that shows up. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull this over here. And we can do that by just going over to our texture tag, and we can change our offset. So I'm going to go ahead and offset it, the V. I also want to rotate it. And so we can go ahead and rotate it around. Okay. So just think of this as our texture being projected. So we want the grid to be facing that. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and move it down. And we can move it up a little bit. Okay, now right now it's being repeated, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off tiling. And let's go ahead and move it back so it's going to be projecting the right direction. Now we can also deform this a little bit so you can see how it's being stretched. So I can increase the length here, or I can decrease it in the V, and then just offset it until I get it in the right spot here. All right. Okay, and then once you get it in the right position, we can still layer that over our other material here, and you can kind of see the line still. So if that happens, you can either match up the color that you have underneath with the color in your image, or we can come in here and let's go ahead and open up our image, and we can, let's take our exposure down a little bit to something like -0.4 to get that to kind of blend in a little bit more. And then we can still come in here and tweak the, let's say the height. I want to make that a little bit smaller, tweak the position, and we don't have to worry about having UVs. Okay, so just depending on if you're working with something with UVs, you can change this projection to, if you're working with something that's spherical, and all of these, they'll enable you to place textures onto objects without necessarily having to have UVs. Okay? And you also have the ability to change whether it's on the front, back, or both sides. So in this case, you can see it's on both. We can change that. And since this is double-sided here, it's putting it on both. But if you wanted to define, refine, or confine the texture to just this side, you could make a selection tag as we did before and just assign it. And we might even have one here. Yeah, so we could just say, okay, we want this on C2. And then it's only on C2. Okay? So that's how we can start to work with external textures in a real simple sort of way. Just bring it into your material under texture, bring that in, and then you can manipulate it using a projection. So now that we've looked at bringing in an external texture, let's take a look at the ability in Cinema 4D to create our own textures. And this is a really, really powerful part of Cinema 4D Body Paint, and we're just going to touch on it in one lesson here in the intro, but it's a really nice way to create textures. It's used a lot, and you can create layers and things like that. So we'll take a quick look at that as we finish up our project, our texturing of our project in the next lesson.